There are only 3 certainties in life: death, taxes, and Hulk Hogan doesn't do a job for no one, brother. However, did you know that there's a species of jellyfish that can essentially live forever? And as for taxes, well, the world's billionaires certainly seem to have gotten around that issue, haven't they? So that just leaves the Hulkster, and wouldn't you know it, even he isn't as immune to defeat as we thought he was. Hogan losing a match is one thing, but for him to lose one clean is practically unheard of. The Pastamania mogul was notoriously protective over his image and held enough backstage pull to quash most suggestions of him taking an L. However, even the 24-inch pythons weren't strong enough to fight these booking decisions. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and what you gonna do when 10 times Hulk Hogan lost clean runs wild on you, brother? Join us. Number 10 versus the Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania 6. Whilst Hogan had lost clean a few times in the late 70s and early 80s, once he became the poster boy for WWE, these defeats dried up quicker than Hogan's event booking circa 2015. His first major clean defeat in WWE's pay-per-view era took place during the main event of the biggest show of the year, WrestleMania. And not just any main event, this was the Ultimate Challenge. Hogan was putting his WWE Championship on the line against the Ultimate Warrior's Intercontinental Championship. Whoever won the match would walk away with both belts and all the glory. In a shocking moment, Warrior pinned Hogan after one of his patented splashes, crowning himself the new champion and effectively usurping Hogan's role as #1 babyface in the promotion. Well, that was the plan anyway. Hogan managed to get the belt back just a year later, but in the moment it felt like the guard was changing. This was an incredible ending to a great match, even if Hogan did try and ruin it by kicking out at 3.000001 and making sure that the spotlight was on him walking away in despair. Number 9 versus Roddy Piper at Starrcade 1996. Alongside his 8 WrestleMania main events, Hogan is also a 3-time headliner of WCW's equivalent to the show of shows, Starrcade. The second of those main events came in 1996, when Hogan took on one of his oldest foes. Rowdy Roddy Piper had shown up in WCW just a few months after Hogan had formed the New World Order alongside Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. He proved to be quite the thorn in the NWO's side, even outing Eric Bischoff as secretly being in cahoots with them. WCW champion Hogan was forced to battle his longtime nemesis at Starrcade. Despite throwing every ounce of outside interference at Piper that he could, Hogan could not overcome the hot rod and passed out to his sleeper hold. Piper had done it. He had beaten Hogan at the biggest show of the year and had won the World Championship. But no, wait a second, he didn't actually make Hogan agree to put the title on the line, even though it was the main event of Starrcade, and he was the one to draw up the match contract. I guess all that bagpipe playing must have deprived Roddy's brain of oxygen. Number 8 versus Sting at Bound for Glory. Despite picking up a myriad of wins over Hogan in WCW, Sting had to wait until Hulk's last ever televised match to finally score a clean pin over the Immortal One. At TNA's flagship show, Bound for Glory, the two Hall of Famers locked horns in what was, on paper, a mouth-watering clash, if that paper was from 1997 instead of 2011, that is. With Ric Flair at ringside, the combined age of everyone involved in this match was older than most European nations, so it's hardly surprising that the match ended up the way it did. Let's just say it was so punch-heavy that you could slap some Mike Tysons on it and sell it for the NES. It ended when the insane icon put Hogan in the Scorpion Deathlock. The Hulkster's surgically repaired spine came crashing down and hurt inside, so he was forced to tap out. You could argue that this win wasn't entirely clean, as Sting used a foreign object to cut Hogan's forehead open. However, we would say that Sting already had the match won by this point, and the actual finish didn't come until over a minute after the spike was used. Also, Sting deserved to get his win back after what went down at Starrcade 97. Just saying. Number 7 versus Lex Luger on Nitro. Shortly after forming the NWO and going Hollywood, Hogan captured the WCW Championship from the Giant. Thanks to Roddy Piper's poor contract writing skills, Hogan held on to the gold for the best part of a year, defeating everyone in his path. That was until he ran into the perfectly chiseled torso of Lex Luger. At Spring Stampede 1997, Luger won a 4 corners match to become #1 contender to Hogan's world title. He and the Giant then teamed up at Bash at the Beach to defeat the champion and basketball star Dennis Rodman in a tag team match. Hogan technically lost that match too, tapping out to the torture rack. There ain't no way Rodzilla was gonna get beaten, Jack. Luger followed up this victory by facing Hogan for the title on the August 4th episode of Nitro. After overcoming a shed load of NWO interference, Luger once again hoisted Terrible Terry up and made him submit to end his reign of terror. This was a great win for Luger and produced one of the biggest crowd reactions in WCW history. Unfortunately, the good times just didn't last for Lex as Hogan won the belt back just 5 days later. Because of course he did. Number 6 versus Goldberg on Nitro. Another episode of Nitro, another huge title change involving Hulk Hogan. Bill Goldberg was one of the hottest properties in all of pro wrestling in 1998. He was on an undefeated streak so impressive it really didn't matter that it was ludicrously inflated. His short, explosive matches made him a megastar and thrust him directly into the main event scene. He squared off against Hogan for the WCW Championship in the main event of the 6th of July episode of Monday Nitro. With an absolutely rabid crowd at his back, Goldberg crushed Hogan with the classic 1-2 of a spear and a jackhammer to pin the champion and claim his prize. Hogan may have been a world-class politicker, but he clearly knew that Goldberg as champion was the money move. He was so over at the time that any result other than him winning the gold would have been a catastrophic mistake. He may not have liked it, but at least Hulk knew that he wasn't the man to end Goldberg's undefeated streak. If only his NWO buddy Kevin Nash shared that opinion. Number 5 versus Triple H on SmackDown. 2002 as a whole was an odd year for WWE as the old vestiges of the Attitude Era crashed headfirst into the oncoming ruthless aggression period of the company. Hogan's return to the Fed in that year meant that he mixed it up with a bunch of names we had never expected to see him work with, including when he tangled with the Game on an episode of SmackDown. It was a #1 contenders match for the Undisputed Championship, as well as a clash of 2 of wrestling's finest barriers. Both men had a reputation for busting out the golden shovel, so who would be left covered in dirt when this encounter was said and done? Trips proved that his spade was the biggest as he pinned Hogan after a pedigree. And let me tell you, the sight of a 48-year-old Hulk Hogan selling for a pedigree is like something out of a different dimension. This would be the last time these two legends ever met in the ring, so Hogan never got to have his revenge. However, considering he was the man who ended Triple H's WWE title reign just a few months earlier, I would still say that Hogan managed to come out on top, as he tends to do. Just ask Mrs. the Love Sponge. Number 4 versus Kurt Angle at King of the Ring 2002. Despite embodying 2 very different wrestling philosophies, Hulk Hogan and Kurt Angle actually have a lot in common. They are both American icons, they are both 6-time world champions in WWE, and they both went bald gracefully. Okay, maybe not that last one. Still, you would be forgiven for forgetting that these two had a match with each other, let alone on pay-per-view. The bout stemmed from Hogan's partnership with Edge, another weird alternate reality thing that happened in 2002. After weeks of assaulting each other and interfering in each other's matches, Hogan vs. Angle was on for King of the Ring. Not only did Kurt defeat Mr. Belair on this show, but he did so in history-making fashion. He forced him to submit to the ankle lock, making him the first WWE wrestler in history to beat Hogan by submission. Also, considering that Hogan's only clean wins over Angle came at house shows, Angle is one of the very few wrestlers never to get their receipt from the Hulkster when the cameras were rolling. Even in TNA, Hogan's only wins over Angle came in non-televised tag team matches. Number 3 versus Brock Lesnar on SmackDown. Our final Bizarro World 2002 matchup comes courtesy of another #1 contender bout from the August 8th episode of SmackDown. Hogan was facing a man whose own run of dominance and backstage power would rival his own in the decades to come. The next big thing, Brock Lesnar. Lesnar had been on a tear since his debut earlier that year and was fresh off winning the King of the Ring tournament. He now had his sights set on The Rock and his undisputed championship, but he needed to get through Hogan first. The suburban commando could have been made of jelly for all we know, because Brock cut through him like a hungry kid at a birthday party. Seriously, he tore Mr. Nanny to pieces, eventually winning the match with a bear hug so powerful it made the Hulkster pass out. Like with Goldberg 4 years earlier, Hogan knew that Brock Lesnar was the future of the business. In giving him such a dominant victory, he helped affirm Lesnar's status as a monster and made the upcoming championship battle with The Rock even more exciting. However, Hogan balked at doing a second job to the Beast Incarnate, forcing WWE to scrap a planned rematch for Survivor Series. Number 2 versus Jacques Rougeau at a WCW house show. No, really, we haven't made this one up. Easily the weirdest name on the list of wrestlers who have beaten Hogan clean is Jacques Rougeau, a man who was primarily known for competing in tag teams for the WWE. He was also the Mountie, you know, the bloke who won the Intercontinental title because Bret Hart had a storyline case of flu. Whilst he was working for WCW, Rougeau faced off against Hogan at a house show on April 11th, 1997. To everyone's surprise, the Canadian actually beat Hogan clean as a whistle, whilst he was still WCW champion. Wow, kayfabe flu sure is a powerful disease. Many theories have circulated as to how and why this happened. The Mountie himself said it was because Hogan had a lot of respect for his family, so did the job in his homeland as a sign of goodwill. However, if you believe Kevin Owens, who broke into the business training under Rougeau, it was because he paid Hogan an extra $10,000 to lie down for him. I mean, after red and yellow, Hogan's favorite color is definitely green, so that figures. Number 1 versus The Rock at WrestleMania 18. Let's end our list where we started it, at WrestleMania in the Sky Dome in Toronto, Canada. After 8.5 years away from WWE, Hulk Hogan returned to the promotion, in which he made his name at No Way Out 2002. Alongside Hall and Nash, Hogan was part of a rebooted version of the original NWO, who promptly set their sights on the two biggest names in WWE at the time, Steve Austin and The Rock. This led to a match dubbed Icon vs. Icon at WrestleMania 18, when Hogan and The Rock met one-on-one for the first time ever. Hogan was supposed to be the heel, but even him trying to murder the Great One with a truck didn't stop the crowd from cheering him like he just ended world hunger. This inverted dynamic led to one of the most fascinating spectacles to ever go down in a WWE ring, which ended when The Rock pinned his adversary with a people's elbow. The end result of the match isn't what was important, because people remember the feeling and the experience, not that Hulkster did the honors.